When Riker turned to heresy, taking by force became the rule. The gods themselves were no different, after all. Volcano Manor, ruled by Praetor Rykard, a demigod and son of Queen Renala and Lord Radigan, is nestled in the center of Mount Gelmir in the west. Although famed for its blasphemous crimes and guild of recusants, the Volcano Manor still bears its secrets. During our travels in the lands between, shortly after reaching Liurnia, we meet a young girl named Raya. When we speak with her, we learn that she is in a predicament and would like us to help her. She informs us that she has been accosted by a ruffian and is now in a bind. When we accept her request, we come to find the thief is Blackguard Boggart. When we pay him for the necklace, we return to Raya. When we return it to her, she thanks us, then formally introduces herself, telling us that she is in service to a Lady Tanith, and that she seeks a stalwart tarnished who might join their house, and gives us the Volcano Manor invitation. It details, brave tarnished, seek the Altus Plateau in the realm of the Erd Tree. Prove yourself by making this journey, and the Volcano Manor will fully extend its invitation to fight amongst a family of champions. She then asks us to adhere to the letter, and that most tarnished are doomed to wander the outskirts of the lands between, peering wistfully up at the towering Erd Tree. She then informs us that this land of Liurnia is connected to the Altus Plateau by the Grand Lift of Dectus, but the lift has been defunct for an age, meaning there's no simple means of passage. Instead, we must seek the old ruins in the cliff at the base of the valley, near the Grand Lift. There's an old tunnel. It was excavated from both ends, linking Liurnia to the Altus Plateau. She then says she has faith in us and hopes we can meet again. We meet her again after traversing the ruin-strewn precipice, as she is waiting for us at Lux Ruins. She says she's been waiting for us and that she knew we had the stuff of champions. She then offers us her hand. We then take her hand and are teleported to Volcano Manor. When we arrive, we speak with Lady Tanith, whom Raya mentioned in our first encounter. She welcomes us to the Volcano Manor, introducing herself and says that she is the proprietress of this house. She says Raya spoke well of us, a warrior of promise, she believes. She then asks us to join the Volcano Manor. When we accept, she tells us our decision is most welcome and that we now belong to the Volcano Manor family. After telling us the drawing room lies down the hall, she gives us the drawing room key, a key to Volcano Manor's drawing room. The door can be found in the westward corridor upon the left-hand side. When we go down the hall and open the drawing room, we are greeted with some friendly faces, Raya, Bernal, and Dialos, whom we all met before coming to the manor. We can then pick up our first letter. It says, written request from Volcano Manor disclosing the name of a tarnished to be hunted. Old Knight Isvan. He can be found in Limgrave. Find the red mark on your map for the exact location, and a recusant finger. This furled finger is covered in snake scales, an heirloom of the Lord of the Volcano Manor, bequeathed to tarnished who have become family. When we take these items back to Tanith, she says that the letters hold tasks the Volcano Manor desires you to enact, saying that we will be compensated once the deed is done. But if we are loath to hunt our own kin, to leave the house at once. We then travel to the Colosseum in northern Limgrave. We invade Old Knight Isvan in front of this abandoned Colosseum. When we defeat him, he drops a furl-calling finger remedy, and the scaled armor set. Armor worn by Old Knight Isvan. The corroded metal is reinforced with rock-hard scales, making it highly effective against non-physical attacks. Isvan is one of a few wizened tarnished who survived to this day. We return to Volcano Manor shortly after, and turn into Tanith. She tells us that she is pleased and now we are her recusant true, a full-fledged member of the Volcano Manor, rewarding us with the Magma Shot, one of the sorceries developed from the magma of Mount Gelmir. After discovering the ancient hexes of Gelmir, Rykard, son of Queen Renala, brought them back into practical use as new forms of sorcery. She then tells us to never forget that the recusant fights to tread the path of the champion. The way is tainted, but for this very reason, it is the true path to valor. We also go speak to Raya. She asks us if we've ever heard any strange sounds at the manor, something beyond the walls like breathing or slithering scales. She then dismisses these thoughts as impossible and that she must be tired. We then go to the drawing room to get our second letter. It details the location of Riley the Idol. We then travel to Central Altus Plateau. We invade Riley in a sort of valley that leads to the shaded castle. He is wearing the Confessor's set. Worn by church confessors, the churches outside the lands between, dedicated to the teachings of the Two Fingers, send confessors out to follow the guidance of grace. The confessors are loyal servants to the Two Fingers, ready to hunt down and quietly dispose of their enemies. When we defeat him, he drops a rune arc, Furl-calling finger remedy, Krapus's vial, a small, mysterious bottle with a dark mist sealed within, eliminates all sound made by the wearer during movement. A ritual implement used by Round Table Hold assassins. There was a time when Tarnished, who had strayed from guidance, feared nothing more than utter silence. And black key crossbow bolts. When we turn into Tanith, she rewards us with the Serpent Bone Blade, a sinister katana modeled after a serpent bone. The densely packed rows of spines that jut away from the cutting edge are coated in a lethal poison. She then tells us that perhaps the time has come to tell you of the true ruler of this manor, Lord Rykard. The Erdtree blessed the Tarnished with grace, but it was all too meager in the fate of the enormity of their task. The Tarnished were forced to scavenge, squabbling for crumbs like the Shardbearers, vying for power in the wake of the Shattering. Lord Rykard, indignant, had refused to scurry about, fighting over what miserly scraps they allow us. If the Erdtree, and indeed the very gods, would debase us so, then we are willing to raise the banner of resistance, even if it means heresy. She says we at the Volcano Manor under Lord Rykard have sworn no rest until it is done, and if we follow this heroic path, one day the Lord will see us. The Lord's visits with our champions are always a spectacle, and it cannot come a day too soon. When we speak with Raya again, she is in the form of a serpent. She asks us what our business is here, and what's the peculiar look upon our face, realizing she's still a serpent and how dreadful it is for us to see her like this. She asks us to forgive her distress, stating that she ought to be thanking us for treating her as usual, despite her appearance. She then tells us that this is her true form and that her real name is Zarias, and to try and understand. The duplicity is her own doing. Lady Tanith speaks no falsehoods, and the Volcano Manor is just as it seems, stating that she is told she was born by the grace of a glorious king, and that her mother cherishes this form she inhabits. She then says she is proud of what she is, but people are cruel, and if they saw her true form, they would not speak to her, so she assumes a guise when seeking new recruits. Now she shares the secrets with us as well. She asks us to please keep them safe from anyone else. Before we retrieve the final manor request, we approach Tanith about Raya's serpent form. She says if she confided in us, then perhaps it is not her place to speak, but as her mother, she asks us to be kind to her and look after her. Zariah's true visage belies the purity of her heart. We then go down the hall to the drawing room to receive our final request. It details Juno Hoslow, Knight of Blood. He can be found in the mountaintops of the Giants. We then make our way to the mountaintop of the Giants. When we face Juno, he is wearing the same armor as Dialos, but with a different helm, a twin-tailed silver helm decorated with flowery adornments, symbol of the head of the revered House of Hoslow. Juno Hoslow had a younger brother who was all talk and no trousers. His inability to commit to action was such that Juno inherited the Hoslow legacy without resistance, granting him the freedom to shower his little brother with adoration. He wielded the Rose Petal Whip, a metal whip formed of razor-sharp chain-link blades that have the appearance of flower petals. This work of art is handed down through the generations of the illustrious House Hoslow. High dexterity is required to wield this weapon, but it excels at inflicting devastation. After defeating him, he drops a rune arc, Furl-calling finger remedy, and his whip and armor. Returning to Volcano Manor and turning into Tanith, she rewards us with the Taker's cameo, then asks if we are ready to see our lord, and that he'll no doubt welcome another kindred spirit treading the path of champions. We say no to this as we have requests from other members in the manor to take care of, and we still have to speak with Raya. When we return to her, she seems very distant and lost in thought. She asks us to forgive her and that her mind never ceases to churn as of late. She then says that she knows she can trust us and says she saw something slithering in the pitch black of night. It entered the room next to this one and never came out. And if she's not mistaken, it took the form of a serpent just like her. She then asked if the Volcano Manor hides some secret that Lady Tanith has kept from her, asking us if we discover anything to tell her. We then return to Tanith to speak of Zariah's troubles. She says she should have known something was wrong, and that the signs were clear enough. She then says that Zariah has placed her trust in us, giving her all the more reason to tell us that some things are better left unknown. And no one should be blamed for their heritage when resisting the Erd Tree. What matters one's lineage. After exploring the Volcano Manor, we can tell Zariah of our discoveries. She says she knew there was a secret after all, and that her own mother, Lady Tanith, has deceived her, asking if she was not born by the grace of a king. We then give her the serpent's amnion from the mother's womb, which cradled the poor unwanted offspring of a propellant birthing ritual. It will never dry out, remaining damp indefinitely. She says she remembers this scent distinctly. Funny, isn't it? She's certain of it. She was born inside this. It's a part of her birth mother. She tells us we have her gratitude. Thanks to us, she is no longer afraid, saying that she wants to know how she was born and met Lady Tanith, and that one day she hopes to call her mother once again, this time from the bottom of her heart. When we go to speak to her again, she is gone. We then ask Tanith about her absence. She replies saying she has no scouting duties and that perhaps she is gone in search of answers. She then asks us for our aid, telling us to give her a tonic if she becomes distressed by the answer to her question. She then hands us the tonic of forgetfulness. Tonic in a small brass vial banishes distress and bitter memories. A gift bestowed by Rykard, sworn to blasphemy, to Lady Tanith, who unfortunately had no use for it. She then says that asking us to do this is gravely disrespectful to Raya, but there is no choice. When next we meet Raya, she's in the dungeon. When we speak to her, she says that she's afraid and has something to tell us, saying that she was born not of grace but of a hideous ritual, something that can never be accepted, not by men nor serpents. Even Lady Tanith shouldn't accept her. She says she knows that we have done so much for her, but she wishes to ask one last kindness. She asks us to kill her, saying that she thought that she feared nothing and to free her from this accursed frame. When we decide not to kill her or give her the tonic, she tells us that we are so kind and uncompromising. When we return to talk to her again, she is gone, leaving us a letter and Daedakar's woe. A disturbing likeness of a woman whose skin was flayed. She smiles with a serene tenderness. It is said that this woman named Daedakar indulged in every form of adultery and wicked pleasure imaginable, giving birth to a myriad of grotesque children. The letter entails I wish to set out on a journey so that one day I can carry on mother's work, be the proud daughter of Tanith of Volcano Manor. Farewell. You've always been so kind, so uncompromising, my champion. When we return to the main hall in the manor, Patches is waiting for us. We first meet Patches at Murkwater Cave because he jumps us when we open his chest. When we hurt him enough, he surrenders, gives us 2 golden runes, and offers to sell us goods he's collected. When we reach Liurnia, we can find him resting by a site of grace. Here he tells us that we can find an abductor virgin who will take us to the base of the Erd Tree if we let it capture us. But he's tricked us before, so we do not listen to this. He then tricks us again with the trail of glowing stones, then pushes us off a cliff face and warns us about Volcano Manor. When we finally reach Volcano Manor, he's there and says he didn't think we had it in us. Later on, he gives us the letter to Patches and asks us to complete the task within for him. The letter says, a written request from Volcano Manor addressed to Patches, disclosing the name of a tarnished to be hunted. Great Horn Tragoth, he can be found at the ruin-strewn precipice. Find the red mark on your map for the exact location. We then set out to hunt Great Horn Tragoth in the ruin-strewn precipice. When we face Tragoth, he wields the Giant Crusher, a hammer made from a boulder used in the war against the Giants, one of the heftiest weapons in the entire Lands Between. After the Giants were quelled and man turned against man in violence, this weapon was all but forgotten. Man has grown feeble in comparison to his forebears. He wears the Bull Goat set. Tragoth is a famed knight of assistance, countless tarnished, facing adversity in the lands between, have survived thanks only to the Great Horned One's aid. This leads me to think that either this weapon was passed down to him from someone in the war against the giants, or he was himself in it. After we defeat him, he drops a Furl-calling Finger Remedy, Rune Arc, and the Bull Goat set. When we return to Patches, he rewards us with the Magma Whip Candlestick. We can then speak to Dialos, Juno's brother, who we first met at the Round Table Hold. He asks if we met a woman named Lanya during our travels, and if we find her to let him know. We run into him again in Liurnia, where he has discovered Lanya, swearing to find the recusants who did this to her. He then returns to Round Table Hold, telling us that they invited him to join them. He then says to us the location of the manor and intends to go there. When we meet him there, he has had a change of heart, as Tanith has convinced him to join the manor. He eventually leaves the Volcano Manor and ends up in Jarburg. We can speak to Bernal in the drawing room. We first met Bernal at the War Master's shack in Stormhill. He offers to teach us Ashes of War in return for runes, stating that there is a myriad of battle arts in these lands that are yet to be discovered. Mementos of all the warriors who raised their arm in battle, lost and died. A fine tale, all told, of true chivalric romance. That's how he fell in love with the sword and the arts of combat. It grants meaning even to falling in battle and death itself. He joins the Volcano Manor shortly after we do and asks us to help him in hunting one of his marks. The letter he gives us reads a written request from Volcano Manor addressed to Bernal, disclosing the names of 2 Tarnished to be hunted, Vargrim the Raging Wolf and errant sorcerer Wilhelm. Both men can be found in the royal capital of Leyndell. We then set out to hunt Vargrim and Wilhelm in Leyndell. We arrive at the Round Table Hold in Leyndell, and when we're summoned to assist Bernal, Vargrim and Wilhelm await in the main hall. Vargrim wields the Godslayer's greatsword, once belonging to the Glowmite Queen, and wears the Raging Wolf set, armor worn by Vargrim the Raging Wolf, one of the first Tarnished to visit the Round Table Hold. According to the old legends, wolves are the shadows of the Empyrean. Vargrim aspired to such a state himself. Wilhelm wields the Staff of Loss, a staff missing its glintstone, wielded by sorcerers who believe that discovery comes through acts of asceticism. This staff only distinguishes itself when casting invisibility sorceries, but that is reason enough for some to wield it, and wears the errant sorcerer set, a commonplace robe made of thick cloth worn by the errant sorcerer Wilhelm, one of the first Tarnished to visit Round Table Hold, a silent seeker of sorcery who had gone so far as to make contact with the primeval current. Wilhelm was led by guidance into confrontation with his friend Vargrim, and it is said that he was then taken prisoner in Round Table Hold. He also wears the Herodis Glintstone Crown, a group I discussed in my video on the primeval current. I theorized that Vargrim was in the Shattering War and that he aided Malekith in slaying the Glowmite Queen, which is why he uses the Godslayer's greatsword as a spoil of war, and that Wilhelm was one of the Academy's nomads who could study sorcery outside of it, and when he made contact with the primeval current, Vargrim was sent to capture him. After we defeat them, Vargrim drops his armor and Wilhelm drops nothing. We then return to Volcano Manor. Rykard was amongst the children of Renala and Radigan, who became demigod stepchildren after Radigan's union with Queen Marika. But Rykard fed himself to the blasphemous serpent, Great Rune and all. Rykard took the form of a giant serpent that he might devour, grow, and live eternally. I understand. The road of blasphemy is long and perilous. One cannot walk it unprepared to sin. As Lord of the Manor, he too was Lord of the Recusants. His recusants would go out and recruit or kill other Tarnished, and eventually the strongest of these champions would be consumed. The blasphemous blade is a sacred sword of Rykard, Lord of Blasphemy. The remains of the countless heroes he has devoured writhe upon the surface of this blade. Now they share the same blood, bound together as family. Rykard's Rancor is able to summon the spirits of these champions, the terrible power of Rykard, Lord of Blasphemy. Summon searing spirits. These spirits manifest from the rancor of heroes who met a violent end. The Lord granted them an audience, whereupon they were welcomed by the maw of the Great Serpent, and within the serpent's bowels they became the Lord's kin. Praetor Rykard's ambitions, though blasphemous, marked him a worthy sovereign, but they were reduced to gluttonous depravity once he gave himself to the serpent. Whatever he is now, it is no longer Praetor Rykard, so we must slay him to spare him and his ambitions from further dishonor. The Gelmir Knights once served as Rykard's royal knights. The armor worn by knights once royal to Praetor Rykard bears an emblem that none wear any longer, standing as it does for a lord that fell from lofty ambition into gluttonous depravity. As the lord lost his dignity, so too did these knights lose their master. When Rykard turned to heresy, taking by force became the rule. When their master's heroic aspirations degenerated into mere greed, his men searched for a weapon with which they might halt their lord. One of the last of these knights left the serpent-slaying spear in the Lord's chamber. It is the only thing that can slay the horror that Rykard has become. The Serpent Hunter is a weapon that serves as both greatsword and spear, thought to have been used to hunt an immortal great serpent in the distant past. It manifests a long blade of light when facing such a creature. After defeating Rykard, we return to the manor and tell everyone of Rykard's demise, to which everyone agrees that perhaps it is time to move on, save for Tanith. We find Patches in the shaded castle. He's badly injured and gives us the dancer's castanets. Castanets used by dancers from foreign lands. The passionate dance comprises no seductiveness, but merely a dignified beauty. When we go back to the manor to find Tanith feasting on Rykard's corpse, we can give the castanets to her, but she hardly cares for them, telling us she has no need for them. Long ago, when Rykard first set eyes on Tanith, she was working as a dancer in a foreign land. Soon he made her his consort. She was the only human to remain by his side when he became the Serpent of Blasphemy. In that moment, Tanith was truly charmed by him. We then go back to Jarburg and find that it has been ransacked. Dialos lays on the ground and dies from wounds protecting the jars from the bandit. He wore the Hoslow set, garish silver armor decorated with red embellishments, passed down through the Hoslow family. When Juno Hoslow received an invitation to the Volcano Manor, he discreetly refused. I have already walked many a road drenched in blood, yet never could I consider myself a champion. Dialos' mask, a replica of a twin-tailed silver helm with flowery adornments, only without the twin tails. Dialos Hoslow had an older brother, who was a stern, self-possessed man of a few words. His achievements made him seem out of reach, and so the younger aspired to be like the older, yearning for the day that he would tell the tale of House Hoslow in blood, knowing full well that it would break his brother's heart. He also wielded the Hoslow Pedal Whip and the distinguished Great Shield, a great shield featuring sumptuous ornamentation used by the scions of great families. Due to their excessive size, these shields were at times seen as the hallmark of little lordlings who were too timid to earn a few nicks and scratches. He also surprisingly has a Newman's rune, which is noted as the lingering residue of gold, so perhaps Dialos was part Newman, and House Hoslow has Newman roots. When we reach crumbling Fair Missoula, we can summon Bernal for assistance against the duo of Godskin apostles that are inside of the communion room. After, he attempts to invade us, even though the manor has been dismantled and the recusants are no more. When we defeat him, he drops the Beast Champion set, silver armor engraved with tiny beasts, worn by Bernal the recusant. Beasts are drawn to champions and to lords, and this armor befits a champion worthy of becoming a lord. And that is what Bernal was, until his maiden threw herself into the fire. The Devourer's Scepter, a scepter in the shape of a serpent devouring the world. This weapon will one day become the very symbol of the Lord of Blasphemy. One of the legendary armaments, a vision of the future briefly seen by Rykard in his final moments before being devoured by the Great Serpent. And the Blasphemous Claw, a slab of rock engraved with traces of the Rune of Death, can deflect the power of the Black Blade. On the night of the dire plot, Ronnie rewarded Praetor Rykard with these traces. Should the coming trespass one day transpire, they would serve as a last resort foil, allowing Rykard to challenge Malekith the Black Blade, the Black Beast of destined death. I theorize here that Bernal was once a tarnished trying to become Elden Lord, but when his maiden had to be sacrificed, it changed his perception of the Erd Tree. So when we come across him in Stormhill Shack, he has not made this sacrifice, and sometime during our travels, he was able to make it to the Giant's Flame and witness this event. He then becomes a recusant and pledges the destruction of the Greater Will. After we defeat Rykard, he then goes his own way with the Blasphemous Claw in hand, because he knows that Malekith has destined death, and unbinding destined death will allow him to slay the Greater Will. But we cross paths, him meeting his end. During our exploration of Volcano Manor, we come across the Man-Serpents. It is said that long ago, the Elder Serpent that dwelled on Mount Gelmir devoured a demigod, and the birth of the Man-Serpents followed. Earlier in Raya's questline, we discovered the Serpent's Amnion and Daedakar's Woe. With these items in Raya, we unraveled the mystery of how the Man-Serpents came to be, as they were consummated through Daedakar by the sin of adultery. Some Man-Serpents wield magma blades, curved swords with a blade fashioned from the lava of Mount Gelmir, an armament of the Man-Serpents impossible for a human to have made. Man-Serpent shields, small copper, dome-shaped round shields carried by the Man-Serpents of Mount Gelmir, said to have been tempered in lava. Others wield magma-whip candlesticks. These ritual implements are a three-pronged candlestick with solid flames formed of the magma of Mount Gelmir. When wielded as a weapon, the flames become supple whips of lava, or the Gelmir Glintstone Staff, a staff with a fork tipped embedded with red glintstones. The Man-Serpents of Mount Gelmir draw from faith in addition to intelligence to enhance the potency of their sorcery. We find the Serpent God's Curved Sword, a curved sword fashioned in the image of an ancient serpent deity and tool of a forgotten religion practice on Mount Gelmir, formerly used to offer up sacrifices. With this description, I'm led to believe that before the time of the Volcano Manor, there was some sort of society of beings who worshipped Igle, eventually merging with or being wiped out by the Volcano Manor. We run into a single omen killer in this small town square, burning the bodies of the Albinarchs and royals that inhabit the Volcano Manor. They wear the Omen Smirk mask, a mask with long, hideously twisted horns worn by the Omen killers. It bears the smirking face of an elder, twisted in wicked delight. This visage is carved in the image of the evil spirits that haunt the Omen in their nightmares. They wield the great Omen Killer Cleaver. The blade of this huge, loathsome cleaver comprises a row of amputated Omen horns, weapon of slaughter wielded by Omen killers. The hideous horns cause blood loss, adding vibrant colors to the ongoing mayhem. They also wear the Omen Killer robe, a robe worn by the Omen Killers, butchers of twisted conscience. Its thick apron is worn in remembrance of Rollo, the progenitor of the Omen Killers and a perfumer of antiquity. Rollo was known as the first Omen Killer. Once a famous perfumer, he imbibed a physic to rid himself of emotion, thus enabling him to enact his nightmarish labor, hunting the Omen. The Abductor Virgins are these Iron Maiden-like constructs. They come in what seems to be two models, one with crescent chain blades, the other with Giza's wheels. Great iron wheel lined with flesh-flaying blades, device of torture used by Inquisitor Giza. As the wheel spins, it causes severe pain and blood loss. The design was adopted for use as the iconic weapon wielded by Iron Virgins. And both of these models of Abductor Virgins have what seems to be snakes inside of the chambers they can grab you into. Inquisitor Giza also wields Giza's wheel, as they are the reason the Abductor Virgins are built with them. The duo of Abductor Virgins below the manor have the Inquisitor's Girandol, an instrument of torture used on nobles behind the curtain at the Volcano Manor of Mount Gelmir. Its numerous spikes pierce the flesh, then singe the wounds with flame. The smell of burnt blood induces despair in the victim, a candlestick conceived by a thorough mind. Lastly, we have the Albinarchs, who are apparently the object of torture that goes on here at Volcano Manor. They're seen suspended off the ground or crawling around, their heads covered with the black dumpling. a mask forced on a victim's head to lend torture an extra degree of cruelty. It magnifies one's fears and makes them acutely aware of all forms of pain. When the black dumpling goes on, the torturer no longer seeks answers, only to inflict suffering without hope of relief. The theme with the Albinarchs being subjected to the hostile scrutiny is seen essentially everywhere the Albinarchs exist, save for Ordina. If you made it to the end of this video, you have my thanks. I would go further into the Temple of Igle here, but I'll be covering that and the Godskin Apostles in a separate video after this or the next one. I'd like to give a special shout out to Dim, who helped me flesh out the video's topic, reviewed some of my own theory, and discussed many aspects that attributed and surrounded the concept of the video. Like, comment your thoughts, and subscribe for more content. I'll see you in the next one.